If you want to lose fat, what is the easiest but also the most effective thing that you can do? Hi, I'm Srini. If you have been following me, you know that I'm trying to help people lose fat and get fit using simple habit changes. Now, getting back to a question, what is the easiest and the most effective thing you can do to lose fat? Now, the people at Mind Valley had asked them a similar question, and at the beginning of 2019, they did something remarkable. What they did is they formed a Facebook group of 10,000 people, and they were trying to do this experiment, and they were trying to find out what is the easiest or the most cost effective way in which they can help all these 10,000 people as a group do something to lose weight and then get fit, right? So they were trying to find what is the biggest and also the most effective thing. Now, they did a remarkable experiment and the results were really astonishing. After 1 month, many people started reporting that they were able to lose 20 pounds of fat, and they scored that even till date, they're getting messages from the participants that they were able to lose 50 or 60 pounds of weight. Now, before I get into the strategies that they exactly used with this Facebook group, I want you to imagine something different, something really different. Now imagine that you have gone to grocery shopping and you're back home and you have all this bag full of food. Now there are three things that you can do with the food that you have just got to your home. There is a small tiny little portion of food that can go onto the table because that is what you will need immediately to consume. And a biggest portion of what you have purchased today, the food that you have got from the grocery shop, will go into your fridge. Now, as you keep arranging things in your fridge, when your fridge gets full, that's when you will start dumping things in your freezer, right? Most of the time, we put things in the freezer because we are not going to consume them immediately. We want them to store for a longer time, probably for weeks or months. And those are the things that will go into the freezer. And the things that you keep in the fridge are normally things that you would need for tomorrow or for the day after or things like that, right? So you have a small portion on the table that you want to consume today or immediately, and biggest portion onto the fridge that you will consume later in the week. And when the fridge gets full, you're putting them onto the freezer. Now, your body also more or less works in a similar way, and it also has a storage mechanism for the nutrients, just like how I mentioned about this fridge. Now, how's that? How's that the storage mechanism of the body is acting like a fridge? I'm just going to tell you about that, and you'll be blown out by this information, right? So now imagine that you have just consumed a meal. There are three things that can happen with the nutrients that comes from this meal or from the energy from that meal. So yeah, just keep in mind the analogy about the grocery shopping and the fridge that I mentioned just now. Now coming back to a meal, there's a small tiny portion that gets burnt out immediately so that you can just leave the moment you get energy to do things that you really want to do right now. Those are the things that you keep on the table after your grocery shopping. Now, the biggest portion of the energy gets stored in the body, just like how you keep a biggest portion in your fridge. Now, the body also has a storage mechanism called as glycogen, and majority of the carbohydrates get stored as glycogen either in the liver or in the muscles. Now the liver is a very small tiny organ, so it can store only so much of glycogen in it. So now when the glycogen gets filled in the liver and it is full of glycogen, it cannot accommodate more than that because it's a very small organ. Now the remaining glycogen, the vast majority of it, go and gets stored in the muscles, and that's why I was talking to you in the previous video why muscles are so important, right? It helps in storing so much of glycogen reserves for you, which you can use later, just like how you're taking food out of the fridge tomorrow or the day after, and then you use it for your requirements. Now when the fridge gets full, what do? You keep it in the freezer. So similarly, when the glycogen gets filled in your liver and in your muscles, that's when the remaining glycogen reserves go and get stored in the fat cells or in the adipose tissue. The adipose tissue is nothing but the fat cells, right? So your liver and your muscles act like the fridge in your kitchen or the grocery shopping analogy, and your fat cells act like the freezer, right? And we know that anything you keep in the freezer, you're not going to pull out immediately. You are going to pull out things from the freezer only when your fridge gets empty, right? And so imagine that you keep going for grocery shopping very frequently. You are not going to empty your fridge so easily. It's always going to be kept filled because you're replenishing it very frequently. Now, if your fridge is not getting emptied, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to pull out something from your freezer. Isn't it true? The same thing is going to happen with your body as well. Now, if you keep eating continuously and you're bombarding your body with all this glycogen, right? You're not giving it a chance to empty the glycogen from the fridge, which is your liver and the muscles, but you're dumping up with more grocery, with more food, then there is no way you're going to go and take out the energy from your fat cells, right? Because your glycogen reserves in your muscles and livers are never getting empty because you keep eating again and again and you keep eating more food. So whatever food that gets stored as fat, it never gets a chance to get pulled out from that fat cells, right? Which means you're never giving a chance to your body to pull something from your freezer. Now this is when there is a very simple technique and a simple habit that can actually help you to kind of empty your fridge and then start getting something from your fat cells so that your fat will come down, right? And that is nothing but the eating cycle that our ancestors have told us long back, but it has been forgotten in this modern age. And it is a simple habit of fasting, and these days it is called as intermittent fasting, and there are a lot of variations of it. So I don't want to keep that name because then you have to keep looking at your clock, and then you have to have an app to maintain the time or whatnot, right? So let's not get into that stressful thing of following such diets. I keep it simple, like a dawn to dusk kind of eating cycle. So what our ancestors have said, eat early in the evening and go to sleep early, right? So the same thing we can follow. It's good to follow a simple 12 to 16 hours of fasting cycle, and our natural human cycle actually aligns very well to that methodology. So what we are going to do is simple thing, try to complete your dinner by around 7 or 8 p.m. and then the next day morning, I think most of us have our breakfast around 8 or 9 a.m., right? So that gives easily a 12-hour window. Now, if you kind of be a little bit more conscious, if you can do a little bit more planning, you can do something like 13 or 14 hours, or the best would be 16 hours. But let's not go to the maximum thing. Even if you are able to do a 12 or 13-hour fasting between a dinner and your breakfast, that gives a good chance for your body to empty the fridge and then start taking something from your freezer, and that's what would help in your fat loss. Now there was an interesting study that was done by the researchers at the University of California. So what they did was they were analyzing the different hormones in the body, right? And they were trying to come up with this chart, and it is based on a mathematical model that they did research on many people. So they published this chart, and if you see this chart, on the left side is the time or the hormone levels after you immediately take your meal, right? And if you progress towards the right, that is the hormone level after you complete a meal and couple of hours after a meal, right? After like 12 hours or 10 hours or 20 hours after your meal. So what is the hormone level that is there after you consume your meal? Now there are a lot of interesting things that I got to know from this chart. If you see this orange line, that is your insulin levels. right? Now, insulin is one of the hormone that puts things into your fridge, that puts food into your fridge. Imagine that it is like a helper, right? Now, when you come from grocery shopping, imagine that you are tired and then you call a helper boy and say, hey boy, just put this food into the fridge, right? Now, insulin is that helper boy for you. So what it does, immediately after you consume your meal, there is more nutrients that is coming to the body, and you call this insulin and say, hey, put this glycogen into the liver and the muscles, and that's what insulin does. And that's why you can see that just after the meal the insulin levels are slightly high, and then after a period of 12 to 16 hours you can see that the insulin levels have come down. Now, why it is happening? Because after like 10 or 12 hours you see that there is nobody bringing in more food, and there is no requirement for the helper boy to put those food into the fridge. So what he does, he goes off, right? So insulin levels comes down. But the more interesting thing is there is another hormone that you can see, this blue dotted line, right? So that starts increasing at around the same time, around like 12 to 16 hours, and this hormone is called as glucagon. Now, glucagon does exactly the opposite of insulin. Now, what happens is after 12 to 16 hours, when your body needs more energy, but you're not taking any food, that's where your glucagon guy comes in, and then he tries to give energy to the body, right? So when you're not eating anything, and if you're getting energy, then this is the guy, glucagon, who gets the energy for your body. So what happens after 12 or 16 hours? This guy starts taking out energy from your fridge, and then if your fridge is empty, then he'll start taking from your freezer, right? So he starts emptying your fridge and gives you energy after 12 hours, right? Isn't that a remarkable thing to know? Now, there is another thing that is happening, interesting thing, right? So there are a lot of things in this chart. There is this black line that drops drastically after you after you have your meal, and then you can see that after like 12 or 16 hours it has almost hit the bottom, and this is your glucogen levels, or sorry, your glycogen levels, right? So we can see that after you take your meal your glycogen levels are high, and then as time passes by it starts coming down rapidly, and then after a period of 12 or 16 hours it's almost emptied, right? So your glycogen levels are less, and at the same time there you can see that this free fatty acids are also increasing after like 12 hours, and these what this free fatty acid denote, it is the energy that is coming from your fat cells. So what is happening, your fridge is empty after like 12 hours or so, and then we are the fatty acids means that we are trying to start emptying our freezer also, right? Isn't mind-blowing, guys? So if you don't eat for around this 12 or 16 hour cycle, then your fridge will get empty, and you will also start emptying your freezer. And that's why following this dawn to dusk fasting methodology is an awesome way, a very simple, easy, cost effective, bang for the buck way in which you can help, in which you can work towards your fat loss, and that will also help in your weight loss. Now, if you can, you may be thinking that, okay, this is probably a study done by researchers and all that, will it work real time? It does work real time. Now, the results might vary from people to people depending upon your current lifestyle and all that. If you, for example, if you already have a low carbohydrate diet, then you will start emptying your fridge even faster, or probably your freezer can get emptied faster. And if you are someone who have a very active lifestyle, then following this fasting methodology will help you to burn even more fat, and you will probably burn all your fat in your freezer, right? But if you are having a very much sedentary lifestyle, don't worry about it. You will still get to lose your fat, because after 12 to 16 hours we see that these hormones really do a good job of emptying your fridge at least, right? So that's why this fasting methodology is a very simple, effective, bang for the buck, cost effective way to do. And here it is nothing like a diet, right? So what I'm saying is you don't have to add something to what you're eating now, or you don't have to remove something from what you're eating now, right? I'm not telling you to come up with an entirely new diet. What I'm saying is you have to do only one thing. Just watch out when you're eating a dinner and when you're eating a breakfast. That's all you have to do. You don't have to add anything. You don't have to remove anything from your diet. Having said that, if you make your meal more nutritious, you can get more out of this. And if you add more activity levels, you can even get more out of it by emptying everything from your freezer. And that's what will help in reducing more fat. But don't worry about that if you have not done any of this fasting before. If you are someone who always eats something like 10 p.m. or you eat in biryani at 12 a.m. in the night, or you get up something in the middle of the night and then you open the fridge and then you take something and all that, just try to kind of follow this fasting thing at least for the next 1 month. You will see amazing results. Simple thing, try to start with a 12-hour cycle. Like if you find it very difficult to have your dinner early, at least try to complete it by 9 p.m. and have your breakfast by 9 a.m. in the morning. And then you can slowly advance. After like 2 weeks, you can make it like 8:30 p.m. In the night you have dinner, and then you can still have your breakfast at 9 a.m. and then you can advance your dinner time even better. After 2 weeks, you have your dinner at 8 p.m. and still keep your breakfast at 9 a.m. Now you're kind of increasing your gap, right? You can start playing around with this, but start with the 12-hour cycle. It's very easy to follow. You will not feel very hungry, and even if you feel hungry, it's just your thought, because you have been used to kind of eating something very regularly. So try to drink water. It will kind of suppress your thirst, because many times we kind of think we are hungry, but actually we will be thirsty, right? So a very simple thing of following this fasting methodology, you'll be able to lose your fat. And I want you guys to go and try this out if you have never tried this. And if you have any doubts about how to start this, or what kind of food I need to eat, or if you're facing some issues, challenges following this, or if you want to know how to make your meal nutritious, or how you can add better activity for your health and all that, I wanted to go and write down in the comments and then try this out and let me know how this works. I'm very curious to know how it is helping you guys.